Great. I think we're live. I think we are live. Just about. Let's have a check over here. It's coming in. Fantastic. Guys, I'm going to kick off today's live stream. If you guys have any specific questions or anything like that, you can always post them down below in the chat. But I wanted to touch on something very briefly at the start of today's session to help you guys understand, because sometimes when you get given this diagnosis of a lower back injury, especially if you've been struggling with it for a long period of time, it can feel somewhat gloomy. And I wanted to share, I suppose, a positive message for you guys, especially seeing as it's a Monday. It's a great way to start the week. And just on something that we shared in the members area this last week, and it was kind of backing up, I suppose, why what I say now I believe to be true is that for most of you guys that injure your lower back, although you might be told your disc is never going to be the same again, right? You've got this herniation down here, we've got that stenosis, we've got that degenerative change. You get told it's never going to be the same again, but that often immediately makes you think like you're going to be in pain forever going forwards. You're going to constantly have this sciatica. Your back is never going to be able to do anything again. You can't return to playing with the kids on the floor. You can't return to going out in the garden, not struggling to limp back into the house afterwards. And that simply isn't the case. And we know this because basically nobody does any kind of strengthening and rehabilitation or strengthening and stability building before they injure their lower back. Most people are, quite frankly, very weak and vulnerable. And this is borne out in some of the research. I actually went to look at actual numbers on this kind of stuff, and admittedly this is for the UK. But the simple truth is that so many people are just holding things together in terms of physique and physicality based on what they might have built while they were a teenager at school. Because that often was the last time they did any consistent formalized exercise in a significant way. And this was echoed recently, in fact, this morning, when someone was posting on one of the social media platforms, and they said something along the lines of, my chiropractor told me to go and walk up and down in the swimming pool for an hour to strengthen my back, or the implication was that they were strengthening the back. And so the vast majority of individuals, and this is a very common presentation, is that they maybe have done something to irritate their knee. They've injured their left knee. They have next to no muscle anyway, but they've injured their left knee. And then in managing that left knee, they've been abusing the back even more, bending and twisting and getting into chairs like this, falling into the chairs. And then all of a sudden, after a couple of weeks, they now have a back and a knee problem. And then the knee problem starts to settle down and the back problem persists. And then before you know it, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months have elapsed and we've still got a back issue. And the reason here is that we are not devoting enough time to actually building strength and resilience into our body. And it doesn't need to be complex. And nowadays, from nutrition to exercise, it does often feel, I think for a lot of you guys, that it is a incredibly confusing place to be. It really is very difficult to understand what on earth you need to do, and everything seems to be more complex, and the new thing that's going to fix everything in six and a half minutes a day. And the simple fact of the matter is that the basics work. The basics have worked for a long period of time, and the basics will continue to work. Things like the squats and the hip hinges, etc. Now, if I read a brief bit off some of the research that I was doing over the weekend, and this is admittedly for the UK, but it said less than 7% of UK adults, and I think it was maybe a little bit higher for men, and it was about 4.5% for women, actually do any kind of strength training for longer than a year. And that is absolutely mind-boggling, because that means that nobody is building any kind of strength and stability into the spine, into the body, into the legs. And so we're just constantly losing it. It's use it or lose it, right? And so many people are coming into, for example, the Back in Shape program with a significant degree of vulnerability. Is it any wonder that we struggle just in the coordination to actually start to protect this spine? Yet that skill is so important to allowing this spine to get better. And the fact that almost nobody, 93 to 96% of you guys watching this, haven't consistently done any level of strength training, resistance training, over any length of time, is why it is so possible, no matter how bad your back is, that you can be in a position where objectively you are doing more, you are stronger, you are more resilient to future injury than you were before you injured your back, if you follow through. Because the simple fact of the matter is it takes time to make change within the body. It takes time to build resilience in this spine. And in the process of doing exercises like the squats and the hip hinges through explicit workouts, not only are you recovering from the back pain down here and the sciatica that's coming from an injury down here in the lower back and strengthening this area, but you are strengthening and improving the health of the whole lower limb, the ankle, the knees, the hips, etc. And this is quite equally why so many of you guys that are recovering from lower back injuries find that you get a little bit of knee bursitis, a little bit of hip bursitis, a little bit of tendonitis in the hamstring or tendonitis in the quad, or a bit of issue with the knees specifically. It's because you weren't strong beforehand. And so unfortunately, this creates extra layers of not significant complexity, but it's considerations as you're doing your rehabilitation. This is one of the very important reasons why earlier this year, or for the significant part of the front half of 2025, we've been going through a revamp of the workouts in the program so that we can actually have 2 workouts as we get into the main part of the program, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, whereby we're focusing on squats on one workout and hip hinges on the other. Why? Because for a lot of you guys, you're going to have that knee weakness. And there was only one of the girls in the group, or ladies in the group today, was posting a comment about the fact that she's got some irritation of the knee. So we move over to do a hip hinge workout because you've got really weak legs. And so when you're doing the squats and things like that, and you're practicing your squats, okay, and you can only go to here competently, yet you're having to do all sorts of things through the house every day, you're challenging your legs to a point at which it's maybe irritating the knees a little bit if we've got that pre-existing condition on the left knee, maybe a bit of arthritis or whatever it may be. And so we have to have something like a hip hinge workout that we can use to continually build the strength of our spine and our hip girdle whilst giving the knees a little bit of a break, and then the knees can catch up. Someone else posted in the group literally this weekend, it's really nice the way in which this has flowed into today's live session, hopefully it's helpful for you guys, that they posted an article, and I'll try and pull it up here on the side, see if I can find it again, talking about there we go, lifting 100 kilograms at age 70 to manage arthritis. And I do very much think more and more, you see people with knee arthritis, you see people with back injuries or back degenerative change that came on, so many of you, it wasn't a tremendous amount of load that you were lifting when you injured your lower back. It was picking up a water bottle. It was putting your shoes on when the most recent episode fled up, which highlights the lack of strength and stability that was self-evident in those stats I mentioned earlier. About 96% of you guys haven't done any significant strength training for a significant period of time beyond a year, period. And so these degenerative changes, these vulnerabilities, these arthritic changes really seem much more like the nail that's left on the side for 4 years, 5 years, that goes rusty. It didn't go rusty and degenerated through use. It got rusty and degenerated through lack of care. And that's so often the case. And unfortunately, when we get these diagnoses of a back injury or of arthritis or whatever it may be, we often feel like we shouldn't do things. Oh, I shouldn't do any exercise because I've got a bad knee, don't you know? I've got a bad back, don't you know? Well, actually, perhaps the right thing to do couldn't be further from that. Now, someone's posted in here, Caesar's posted, can it be fixed without surgery? The vast majority of lower back injuries do not require surgery. They do not require surgery. And also, it's important to identify what we are doing in the surgical intervention. Now, of course, if there is an emergency case to be said, we've got red flag symptoms, the cord equina, saddle anesthesia, loss of bladder and bowel control, those kind of things, then it is important to get the necessary attention swiftly. I'm not talking about over the course of a couple of weeks, you need to go and get it checked out. But most of the time, you're going to do that, and then you'll be sent home. You say, yeah, look, all's okay. Yes, it's bad, but it doesn't warrant any emergency intervention. So that means that most of you guys do not warrant emergency intervention. But even those of you that do have some kind of surgical intervention of some description, it's often a case of, well, we tried a lot of stuff, so we may as well try surgery. Many of you will be familiar with that kind of discussion. And so what is happening? Let's just suppose it's going to be the case of the herniated disc, right? What is the problem here? What is the surgery being done? The surgery being done in this particular case is operating to remove this bit of disc here. That is what the surgery is doing. The success, I think you'll find in conversation, and of course it's worth having this certainly with your surgeon beforehand, what is success in this surgery? What would you classify as a successful surgery? And you're reasonably likely to find that a successful surgery means that this bit of disc has been successfully removed without any complications. That doesn't sound like healed. That doesn't sound like better again. That sounds like this bit of disc has been removed. But what is the problem in this case? The problem is partially that the disc is pressing on the nerve, perhaps in this scenario, but it is the fact that the annulus fibrosus the posterior fibers of the disc here that this has just broken through are damaged. And those are not healed miraculously after 24 hours after you've had surgery. Those remain injured, remain in need of care and attention and rehabilitation for the weeks and months after the surgery. And so if we haven't been given guidance, we had one of the individuals, I don't know if they remember or not, posting on the live last week, one of the lives, and they said, I spent 10 grand, 10,000 pounds, about 15,000 US dollars on a surgery, and I don't feel like I'm better afterwards, or something to that effect. And there was no discussion of rehabilitation. It was do this and then bye. And that too often is the case. So if you're going to see any sort of clinical consultations with your spine specialists, with your orthopedic surgeons or your neurosurgeons, there better be some element of rehabilitation guidance, and it better be taken seriously, because that's going to be, really, I would argue, the make or break, whether things are going to be, quote unquote, successful in your eyes or not. Very important. Just looking at some of the comments over here on YouTube. Luke has said he's got right flank pain. I'm constantly under GP care. Not too sure about the metallic taste, but the most important thing is that we're doing proper rehabilitation work. We need to build strength and stability. The GP is not going to be the specialist that is going to provide that level of support and care. You need actual rehabilitation work in these scenarios. D59 has said, I had a lumbar herniation at L4-5, back surgery, microdiscectomy, and laminectomy. I have not done the exercises consistently. Went to a chiropractor for years after surgery and most recently experienced pain. You've got to do the rehab work. The chiropractor, the osteopath, the physiotherapist, the various other specialists, they cannot do strengthening for you. The only person that can do the rehabilitation work is you. Now, you can have guidance. It could be in video form, like we do it with the members in the program. It could be helping one-on-one in person. But in the one-on-one in person, you're still going to have to do it at home, because you cannot do one session of rehab a week, 2 sessions of rehab a week, and expect to get any kind of results. You need to do that consistently over time. And actually, in the early days of rehabilitation, we talk about this with the members in the program, you have to make sure that you are doing it every single day to practice these things. What else have we got here? Sierra has said, I had a cervical spinal cord stimulator, paddle implanted with laminectomy. Stimulator migrated after 3 months. Once removed, I have severe muscle atrophy, dizziness, and headaches. That's tough. You shouldn't. Well, we don't ever go down those routes without seriously considering them, considering the pros and cons. Sally has said, what do you think about denervation following a steroid injection? I feel like, Sally, in those scenarios, you are focusing on the wrong thing. We are focusing on the pain. What does the denervation or the steroid injection do to the injury itself at the root cause of the back pain? It does precisely nothing. It doesn't change any of that. We have to focus on rehabilitation. Now, can people leverage other procedures such as injections, such as surgical interventions, and find that they really were a turning point for them? Sure, they can, but those are the individuals that are already committing to significant levels of rehabilitation that is objectively focused on building back strength and resilience into the spine. If you're not doing that, why do we think we're going to heal any better after the denervation? Because for most people, the pain is actually, it's actually got some degree of help to it, right? You might often be in a scenario where I can't think of anything to make my pain better, but you can certainly think of something to make it worse. You can definitely make the pain worse. And then you look at what those things are. And the reason you're avoiding those things and then settling into a baseline level of pain is because they provoke the injury. If the thought of picking up a 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 kilo load was like, goodness me, I couldn't possibly do that. That's why, because you're damaging the tissues further. You're injuring and stressing the tissues further. And so even if you don't feel like you can do anything to feel better, the innovation just arguably removes the potential for you to be aware of any problem from lifting up such a load that I mentioned a moment ago. NYNKE said, I just started the program recently. I find that some pain in my sacrum area after doing exercises like the dead bug. I cannot upload a video. Definitely get those into the Facebook group. I posted, I'm not going to butcher the name, Deca. I posted in the members area. Post those into the Facebook group. I'll put a link in the members area for that to help you, because it might be an issue with the format of videos. You'll see other members uploading videos at the moment, so it's something that maybe needs a little bit more look into. But what I would suggest is have a look at precisely which variation we're doing. If we're getting aggravation in the sacrum, it is very common for us when we aggravate our lower back to get pain referring into this area of the lumbar spine down here. The other thing to bear in mind for those of you when you're starting out on your rehabilitation exercises is the question of, is getting on the floor a problem, right? So if you watch me get onto the floor down here, right? For a lot of you guys, when you start your rehab, you can only squat like this or do a hip hinge, maybe something like that. We're not very coordinated. We're very vulnerable. We feel like anything we do, we're going to flare our back up. So getting onto the floor can actually be a bit difficult, right? We're kind of going, oh gosh, yeah, and then boom, and I'm over, okay? Obviously, it's not quite that silly, but you guys get the idea. And then when we finish, we go and get up, and we kind of just try and do our best. And if you're in that category, if you've just started the rehabilitation exercises, and we're not very good at them, do them on the bed. It's not perfect. It's not ideal. But it's better to do them on the bed than unnecessarily aggravate yourself. Because what happens is if you just lay on the floor anyway, you'd create a bit of aggravation after a short period of time because of the way in which we got on the floor. So how much of that is us aggravating ourselves during the dead bug? And how much of that is us aggravating ourselves in the process of getting into the position to do the dead bug? This is an important point to reflect on. One of the big mistakes that a lot of people make when they're trying to recover from lower back pain and evaluate the exercises is we're so specific in our evaluation of where our symptoms are. I get pain here, 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 here. And we're not specific in regards to where during the exercises or during the movement, when during the movement, did I experience the aggravation? That is the area that has so much more of a key, such a better key to moving forwards. And so that's something definitely to revisit when we're doing our troubleshooting work with the tutorials, when we're starting out doing things like the dead bugs. Because one of the most important things when we're focusing on building rehabilitation and strength back into our spine after an injury is to make sure that we are getting aggravation-free repetitions. And Decca will cover that kind of admin question about the MP4 format in the comments, because I can't really do admin support on the lives here because I haven't got the various bits in front of me. But do have a look at that, and it should be good. With regards to Facebook, we get many people that just have what would the word be? A temporary, let's say, Facebook account just to get on there. So it's not too difficult to set up, but definitely reach out to us in the members area, and we can comment on that further. What else have we got here? TGP has said, I played tennis for 35 years, twice a week, upper body strength training. That's age 72, experiencing left-sided sciatica. Worsened in the last year, prohibiting tennis or pickleball. I think working on building some lower body strength and stability is going to be helpful. At the end of the day, if we've injured ourselves, we have to take a step back. If you've got that background of a general degree of fitness, then that's going to be good. But what we're talking about here is the lower body. The lower body is the bit that's been bothered. The upper body strengthening work that we've done is great, but it's the lower body that's challenged. The biggest challenge with something like tennis or pickleball is going to be the changing directions. And so what you'll find is as you build strength and stability back into the spine, you then want to go over and start getting back out on the court again. And as long as you can control your urges to go after certain shots, you'll find that you can get back into that sport reasonably successfully. But you've got to start from building a level of objective strength and resilience back to the spine first, and then go on from there. Jim has said here, I'm in level 4, phase 4, at 45% of my body weight, and I'm feeling better. Awesome, nice work. What is the goal? Do I need to plan for 100% body weight over the months and years when I am rehabbed? So Jim, that's a very good question. So we talk a lot about having 3 metrics for you to aim for. And if you're a lady, the last one, the third metric varies slightly. 20% of your body weight, 45% of your body weight, and 75 to 100% of your body weight on a squat or hip hinge with no aggravation, with correct technique, is what you're aiming for when you're trying to build strength and resilience into your lower back as part of your rehabilitation work. And Jim is evidently at the 45 level. Why is the 45% level an interesting level? Because it is the upper end of the maximum load that goes through your spine when you are sitting. So as is compared to when you are standing, when we sit down, we put 20 to 40% of our body weight, or 40 to 90% more load through the lumbar spine. And so being mindful of these milestones, 20% of our body weight, 45% of our body weight, and 75 to 100% is really, really important in planning going forwards. Now, the vast, overwhelming majority will be substantially better. Maybe you get a 5% symptoms remaining compared to when you started out in the process, when you get towards that upper level. But as you go towards that, it is 100% the goal to build strength and resilience to the point where you could pick those things up in the gym for 5 sets of 10 reps without any trouble, without batting an eyelid. Of course, with a warm-up, because that can be quite a reasonable level that we're up to, but that would be the target. And we want to reach that target nice and slowly. Jim, I don't know what your background is beforehand, before the program that is, and what our lifts might have been before then. In a lot of cases, as I mentioned earlier on, 93 to 96% of you guys watching have never done any consistent level of strength training in the past. And that's really important to also understand, because who are you to make expectations as to what is going to be an appropriate upper limit for you as an individual human being? Because you have no experience to base that on. And quite often, those same individuals that have never worked out, which is basically 95% of the population, will say, oh, that's too heavy for me. It's like, no, no, no. That's too heavy for anyone that's not conditioned to do it. And too heavy might be 10 kilos, it might be 20 kilos, it might be 50 kilos, it might be 100 kilos, it varies. But going back to Jim's question specifically, yes, I would be aiming for 100% of the body weight over the coming months and years. And there is absolutely no need to rush whatsoever in trying to build this strength and stability back into the spine. Absolutely no reason to rush. But the nice thing is, the further you go on, the more your level of strength and competence outpaces what daily life demands of you. And so the frequency of relapses happens less and less and less. But certainly, Jim, as you start to approach that 100%, start thinking a little bit more about hip mobility. What is your level of hip mobility? Is there some room for improvement? And could we spend maybe a little bit more time now at that point feeding in a little bit more hip mobility work? Because we want strong first and then mobile hips to be built, because the hips are going to take the strain off the lumbar spine. Just going through some of the other questions here. Oh, cool. Mussolini has said, I met you in 2019 from low back pain. Now I'm pain-free. Awesome. That's nice to hear. Thank you for sharing. Starshin says, is there any way to stretch and relieve stomach muscles without doing the sphinx? I think mine are really tight from scoliosis and perhaps also activated diverticular disease. Not really. Not really. The cobra position or sphinx position would be the one that you would suggest, but I don't know that you'd necessarily need to use that as much as just moving around a little bit more. Just trying to move around a little bit rather than doing any explicit movement. But I don't think the cobra is not a bad move once you've built up the strength and stability in your spine. If it's aggravating, then that says, no, they're still not quite there yet, so we need to focus on building that more. We've got a good number of comments coming in here. I'm just going to go through these in order, and then we'll come back over to TikTok over here. So during the past year, I consulted 2 different PTs. That's physical therapists, I assume. However, neither recommended strengthening, but rather back extension exercises that exacerbated the L4-5 pain. Yes, one of the big things with back extension, because you commonly get told, oh, well, the disc is squashing backwards because we've been bending forwards, which is correct. So if we bend backwards, it's going to have an effect. Now, I just so happen to have, from last week's live, the spine, the band just here. And to give an illustration, there is a very big difference between using the towel for decompression and just doing a backward bending cobra, which is what TGP has probably been recommended. And unfortunately, because the guys don't have the experience, they just don't know about these things. A backward bending cobra, imagine this is your spine. The reason this is really cool is because the crinkles allow you to see how long or short the column is. So I will keep my fingers in the same position. When we do a backward bend like a cobra, you can see there is no real lengthening that has taken place in any significant. Yeah, sure, the front has lengthened a little bit, but not quite the same. When I bend over a fulcrum, you can see that the whole thing gets elongated more. That is the purpose of the towel and the distinction between the towel and just a backward bend. Either way, neither of those are building strength and resilience back into your lumbar spine. So TGP, they haven't done any physical therapy with you to build back up strength. Well, they might have done some stuff, but they haven't actually been focusing on rehabilitating you to get back into doing the things that you want to do, which is a real problem. And Decker has said, I'm going to say Decker, I'm also a bit confused about the live exercises. Are those definitely get back into the members area and follow through the strategy section, because that explains everything. We go through the strategy section in the membership material when we start. So we go to phase 1, the strategy section, blah, 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 and then in there it says how to use the exercise tutorials, and then underneath there it says how to use the live workouts, and then in the practical section you've got the tutorials for each of the individual exercises broken down, and then you've got the live workout at the bottom, which is also there as well. So just make sure you go back in and just look through the phase 1 material to familiarize yourself with the strategy section, which has the videos in on what you need to do and how you need to do it, the practical section, which has the tutorials in and the live workouts, and then there's the educational section underneath. So just spend a bit of time, Decker, just going through the actual phase 1 material. And then any questions subsequent to that, you can always post in the members area or jump into one of these lives again. D59 said, would you recommend ablation during and then doing rehabilitation? No, I would not recommend that. I would not recommend that. What's the purpose? To completely remove any awareness of what's happening in the lumbar spine? I appreciate that people don't go to those kind of procedures lightly, but I would certainly be looking at rehabilitation before. In fact, we had one, I always remember because you post a lot on our videos on TikTok afterwards. A lady that was, I think, maybe a week or two away from having her nerve ablation procedure. I think her name was Silver Fox or something like that on TikTok. And she started doing the rehab work and like just cancelled the appointment. She was doing so much better. Yeah, it didn't happen overnight, but she did it enough times, the rehab work enough times to start to get a signal that actually, wait a second, I can actually do a lot better, and then pushed on from there. Chi Leong has said, "Hi Mike, glad the live session is generally you're generally unavailable on Wednesday." Yeah, we've got people all over. I know where you are, Leong, but we've got people all over, like in every single time zone. So it's only hopefully this gives you guys, even people in the UK. People can't make the same time, so we're trying to do it a little bit more frequently in the week to help you guys as well. So yeah, good that you can join this one. And by the way, guys, if you're watching on TikTok, it's always best to watch on YouTube because it's easier for me to manage the comments there because it's just a much more me-friendly way of reading the comments and going through each one of those. And additionally, we post the recording of these is automatically available as soon as we finished. So you guys can just check out the live page for the YouTube channel. I'm at 30 to 32 kilograms of squat. Nice, 55% body weight, 26 kilos on the hip hinge main exercise. And much better regarding residual sciatica and downtime, very much reduced, which is great. Notice that when I reach upwards to clean and get an object, I could get a twinge. Yeah, so when you're reaching up, so one thing, this is maybe ancillary to work on, would actually be the shoulder mobility, because often if we're reaching up high, we tend to arch our lower back, and so that will almost certainly be what's happening there. So Leong, if you can just slightly engage your core to brace yourself and just go from the shoulder, you should find instantly that makes a difference, because it will be very much a case of as you go up, you just arch that back to deal with maybe a slight limitation in shoulder mobility. And that'll help. That it's just the fact that little hole is just closing around, or there's a bit of shearing at that lower back, which is creating that little bit of aggravation of the at the level of the spine when you're doing that particular reaching up. It's something that's very, very common, and it's just a case of a little modification for the time being, but using that as like a little test. Again, like using these little aggravations that we get from daily life as little tests. There may well have been times in the past where you do that and you're out for a long time. You've built back up a good degree of resilience now. So it's nice to see that. And yeah, we can still get a little bit of aggravation as we're going, but we still got a way to go. So hopefully that helps. Makes sense, Leong. Said here, well, I've already answered it. What's happening? Is this of concern? What should be done to address reaching something higher, even when on a ladder or raised platform? It's just that thinking about that shoulder. Instead of getting the movement from the shoulder, you're getting it from the lower back. And so if you can just be aware of that reality, and tweak it slightly, you'll find that instantly it doesn't become as aggravating. Just coming through the comments now down here. Sam has posted, I'm improving on squats and RDLs, phase 4, 20 kilos plus squats. Nice. Kettlebell low hold, RDL single leg 16 kilograms. Day to day is no better. Any thoughts regarding the Grace 1 Spondy? Sam, we've got to have a look at what we're doing on a daily basis and also try and make some modifications there. I'd suggest that the 16 kilo is probably too high on your single leg work. Focus more on building the squat load rather than the day-to-day. The other thing to bear in mind is how bad was the day-to-day before when we were doing none of this. So we've got to push on a little bit more through the strengthening, because often in the past we weren't doing any of this and the pain was still just as bad. And that's something that we see quite often, right? What we've done is our daily life has been up here, and then we injure ourselves. And so we try and shrink away the daily life and we get it down to here, but we're still experiencing pain. And then we're like, okay, I'll do something. And so now we increase our daily life via where the exercises, and that increases the strain of daily life, but our pain remains the same, which is great. And steadily as we move through further plateaus, if you will, you'll find that things eventually start to settle down. We can't predict exactly where that's going to be, but 20 kilos is not enough. And so we want to build that up a little bit more. Try and be more diligent and disciplined with daily life activities as best you can, and make sure you're not forgetting about the care of self stuff as well. Sam said also, and when we're dealing with spondies, we have to be a little bit more precise. We have to be a little bit more diligent because of that innate lack of stability that is there. Even when building strength and stability, am I right in saying it would still be wise to not directly load the spine from above, given the misalignment? When you're doing any kind of exercise or activity, you're loading it from above. So you're holding the weight down here on a a dumbbell squat or a kettlebell squat, we're loading down here, the weight's going in through the arms and through the spine. I mean, you wouldn't want to do this. That might not be so great. Mainly because of the opportunity for technical errors rather than the exercise itself being bad. And so I would focus, you've just got to do more. 20 kilos on a squat for 5 sets of 10 is not sufficient, is nowhere near sufficient. It's great progress, right? I don't want to at all discourage anyone from making progress, but it's not sufficient. Olu has said, I'm coming out of rehab from quad equina after an emergency surgery. I'm looking at your program now. Nice work. Seems to contain loaded squats, etc. Would the program be the same for me? It contains loaded squats when you get to the loaded squats. It does not contain loaded squats from day one, right? So one of the principles is the program itself is designed to be arguably the safest thing you're going to do every day, whether you've come out of surgery or whether you've not, right? I was speaking to someone earlier who was a little bit older, in their 70s, and has osteoporosis. The exercises, if you are following them as per the instructions and making sure you're following the instructions rather than jumping ahead, the strategy, you will have watched a number, I think it's 8 or 9 videos on what you are supposed to be doing before you even touch your weight, before you even attempt an exercise without weight. And the first 2 exercises that you will attempt is alignment training for a neutral spine, which involves no load, standing against the wall, and activating the core. Neither of those are at all strenuous activities whatsoever, and you've watched a bunch of different videos before you get to that point because it's got to be safe. And you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm not at that point. I just haven't just had surgery. You still need to go through those processes because you have to lay the good foundations. Skipping ahead and looking for one exercise to fix sciatica or whatever it may be is why so many people get caught out with no results for a long period of time. And so then the program builds once we've got the foundations, which involve no body weight. And for some people, and whether you've had a quad equina emergency surgery or whether you haven't is irrelevant to whether you will struggle at this more. What is more going to dictate whether you struggle at this was your pre-back pain level of conditioning and experience. And that's an important point of consideration. The injury itself has nothing to do with that. I use a great example of one of the guys that came into the clinic, maybe we're talking about 6-7 months ago now, who had a very large herniation at L5S1, whose rehab within a period of a month or 2 was over 100 kilos on the squats. Because it's not about the injury, it's about the conditioning beforehand. Yes, the injury has a tilt, but it's about the conditioning beforehand as to how you progress. So your squats might start out like this. Well, that's an assisted squat, holding onto something. They might start out holding onto a chair for the hip hinges, just to be safe. They might start out, for example, with the squats, just slowly lowering your bum to the chair for safety. But my point is, all of those activities that we put within the program as you're working forwards through your rehabilitation for your back injury and your sciatica, they are the safest thing you do every single day because you don't think about your back other than trying to avoid the pain when you get dressed in the morning and put your socks on. You don't think about your back other than the pain when you're going to the bathroom. You don't think about your back when you came home from the hospital. You didn't think about your back when you got out of the wheelchair maybe. Oh, but wait, you weren't in a wheelchair. And if you weren't in a wheelchair, that raises a whole host of other questions of things you've done every day that were more vulnerable or that were more provocative, risky, uncontrolled than your rehabilitation exercises. We talk in the program about the rehab is your time in the lab. It's the only time of your day where all of the other variables, as best you can, are controlled. And even in those scenarios, sometimes the dog walks in or the doorbell goes and it throws you a little bit, right? But the rehab is the safest time of your day. And so many times people are worried about starting rehab while still having a daily life because you're not floating in suspended animation just because you've got a back injury, surgery or not. It's really something to think about. It's a very important but significant mindset shift. What else have we got here? Brian said, I was thinking of going to one-to-one Pilates to get the core engagement and breathing better. Would this help? Probably not, Brian, because they'll probably teach you how to do a pelvic tuck and do it incorrectly. I would suggest the way in which we teach it within the program is going to be the best route. And if you need any more help with that, definitely get into the members area and let us know. But also at the same time know that engaging the core is a real challenge for a lot of people, right? We should be able to like out and in, out and in, out and in. And that should be happening independent of our ability to breathe. But when we start, we teach it with the breath. Most of the Pilates instructionals and instructors, one-to-one or otherwise, will be talking about doing pelvic tilts. And therefore, that's going to set you up for failure or set you up for a problem. Paul said, why don't osteopaths focus on strengthening and rehab exercises? Because that's not your training. That's not the training as an undergraduate osteopath. You're not doing strengthening work. You're training to interface with the body with your hands. That's the job. Why doesn't a surgeon give you rehabilitation exercises? Because their job is to cut this bit out of here. Well, right spine. Their job is to cut this bit out of here. That's the job of the surgeon. So there's no use in them doing the exercises, or it's not formally done. Would it be helpful? Yes. Would it be helpful? Yes. But that's why. That would be why. I mean, you're going to get some rudimentary involvement, but yeah, it's a valid question. It is a very valid question. I don't have a justification for why it's not trained or not taught, but you do tend to find that a number of osteopaths, a number of chiropractors, a number of physiotherapists will have some degree of competence that they have developed over the years in that domain. Samyak has said, I get extremely cold genitals and libido drips. If you're getting Cobra disc bulge at L45 and 5S1, Cobra stretch helps for a few days. I've been doing the Core 5 regularly. If you've got any kind of saddle anesthesia type symptoms, it's always worth getting those checked out. It's always worth getting those checked out. Please, don't leave it. Paul, how do you do strengthening exercises when the pain from sciatica is so bad? How do you get up in the morning? How do you get dressed? You do it anyway. And the point, I know it's difficult, right? It's difficult. Me sat here not experiencing pain right now, but you're doing a lot of things every day in spite of the fact that the sciatica is bad. You are. Like, you're going to do things. You're sat right now watching me on some sort of device. If you're in the bed, then you're going to get up and go to the toilet. So you start where you have to start. That's it. You start where you have to start. You start with the most basic versions. As I mentioned a moment ago, will you do something more strenuous than stand against a wall to ascertain an upright position in the day? Yes. We talk about that on the floor as well, or on the bed. Will you do something more strenuous today than lie on your bed and do this? Yes. So the fact that you're doing all of those things every day in spite of the pain, well, you may as well do something that has a cumulative benefit, because the main thing that's so cool about strengthening exercises, about proper rehabilitation, basically everybody that comes into the program is in pain, right? So it's not like I'm speaking, without experience. Right? People join the program precisely because they are in pain. People come to the clinic precisely because they are in pain. And so the program is designed to help those people, help you guys do that. You're going to be in pain when you start. But again, the point is you're doing so much stuff every day in spite of the pain. People will say, I'm in pain, I can't do the exercises. Oh, but I've got a toddler. It's like, yeah, okay. And you're saying the toddler looks after themselves all day? No, you do stuff. And you cause yourself more pain as a result. You may as well do the exercises that teaches you how to do things better. And steadily, the reason that you're struggling so much in most cases is because the activities of daily life are not done with good technique. And so you're constantly getting out of bed. Oh gosh, my sciatica so bad. Why are you getting out of bed like that? Why are you getting out of the chair like that? Because you haven't had any instruction. But the moment you get some instruction, because you're working on the squats and you learn to, okay, get myself, okay, and then come straight up, oh, I got no pain. I got no aggravation. My sciatica might still be there to the degree it was when I was sat down, but I didn't get a flare up when I did that. And then you move suddenly, oh God, it came back in again, right? Because you're vulnerable. But the point is that we chose specific exercises in the program because you're doing those every day anyway, no matter how bad your sciatica is. So you may as well start learning how to do those movements correctly. That's why the squat and the hip hinge are in the program, straight from day one. And we, in the extensive reconfiguration of the program that we did earlier this year, this was one of the main drivers, because it needs to be there on day one. Because you're doing that exercise, getting out of bed, in spite of the pain from day one. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense, Paul. Starshine said, when we calculate loaded squats, what should squats weight? Should we factor in extra body fat? Yes, I would just assume calculate it for your extra body weight. If you're overweight, just calculate it there anyway. There's no problem. If you aim for the stars, you land on the moon. And I don't think it's we're getting into way too much. That's an example of analysis paralysis. That thought process. Don't worry, just take the figures. They're rough guides and just go. Because the thing is that as you go, right, as you make more progress, that extra body weight will come down, and secret team eat less food. You know, it's always helpful to manage the dietary side of things. Of course, we try not to give you guys overwhelm, but simply eat real foods that you can name, like a chicken, you know, a salad or lettuce, a cucumber, whatever it may be, right? Rather than heavily processed foods, and try and get your calories in the right number and get enough protein. We have specific guidance for that kind of stuff in the program, but it's like everything we try and do. It's as simple as possible, because the complexities, I think, around diet are even worse than back pain with regards to basically every food that you could possibly eat will probably have killed you, according to someone, and that's a very, it's almost maddening, but, you know, eating real foods and getting your calorie intake right and getting enough protein you'll be in a pretty good place. What is it? Dualatron, any loading exercises that will improve chair posture, the squat and the hip hinge. Marmo has said, is there a solution for neuropathy in the leg and foot 8 months after microdiscectomy? If it's related to any nerve damage that you've had as a result of the microdiscectomy, which sometimes happen, nerves heal very, very slowly, but focus on the rehabilitation work. And always, if you've got any sort of consequences of your surgical interventions, guys, you should go back and speak to the surgical team and say, hey guys, I'm noticing this, just to get them aware of it, and they can then triage you in the appropriate manner. I wish I knew about this program, then it would have saved me a lot of heartache. Hospital didn't even give me any rehab exercises. Yeah, I think that's just, I think the expectation of what the hospital should do for us and what the hospital can do for us and what the hospital is doing for us in its current setup, especially here in the UK, those are like three different things. And the sooner we realize what the hospital is actually able to do for us in its current form, the sooner we'll say, yeah, okay, I'll go somewhere else. Ollie said, thanks for the answer. I'm afraid the disc is so weakened by the surgery that I would never be able to do a loaded squat. Your body, no matter whether you've had surgery or not, will constantly be rebuilding strength and resilience. And the simple fact of the matter is, again, Olu, you're sitting down every day, which means you're putting 20 to 40% more load through the lumbar spine. Even now, right now, you're probably sat down watching this, you're putting more load through the lumbar spine than when you're standing. 20 to 40% of your body weight. And therefore, with that in mind, it shouldn't at all be beyond the pale for you to imagine an environment where you could squat holding your phone, which is a weight, by the way. This is a loaded squat. This is the problem with you guys, because sometimes it's so scary when you've been struggling for such a long period of time, and I definitely understand it is scary. But understand this and this are the same. They are both a load. There is no need to be fearful of this compared to this, or compared to this, or compared to the mouse of the computer, right? It's all a load. We need to there is a mental inhibition about this because it looks like a scary dumbbell, right? It's just the load, it's just the load. Now, the number on the load is what you want to pay attention to, and you want to carefully expose your spine to load. But Olu, if you get out of the chair right now and you're holding your phone, you just did a loaded squat. You either did it well or you did it poorly. And hopefully, with a bit of instruction, we can start doing it properly. Taupots has said, how am I doing with these questions? Oh, I'm coming up. Guys, we are coming in 43 minutes. Hopefully it's been helpful for you guys. Just a quick one, and then I'm going to carry on with the questions. If you guys need more help, and I know you guys on TikTok, if you're watching on TikTok and you're finding it helpful, you know, check out the link in the profile page, and definitely I would suggest get over onto YouTube and watch it there, because it's definitely easier for me to manage your questions and comments along there as well. So coming back into the questions, we've got Topots fam says, hello, I'm supposed to eventually be able to hip hinge and deadlift my own weight. I'm only on 20 kilograms at the moment. I hurt my back 2 years ago. It's a target. It's a target for you to aim for. I don't know if we're male or female, but generally for females, we're looking at 75%, and for men, we're looking at 100%. If you are effective in what you're doing and you do it over the next 5 to 10 years, I'd say it's almost impossible. If you're doing it correctly, it would be impossible for you not to get to that point if we're doing it correctly. Now, life might get in the way, etc., and that's a case of priorities. That's not a case of you are a human being who has the capacity to do that. I've got it right here in front of me. I can't show you the guys the screen because I'll pull something out of the laptop, right? In fact, let me see if this works. Let me see if this works to show you, okay? Now, admittedly, I don't know if it's for reps or not, and excuse the cracked screen. That lady there is using a trap bar, and I will tell you guys, it says 100 kilos. There we go, right? And she is 70. There is no reason you can't do that. It's only up here. Like I said, less than, about 95% of you guys, and I'd imagine, asking that question, I'd imagine Topots, you probably fall into this category. 95% of you guys have no experience in significantly doing any kind of resistance training. So you have no idea what's possible. You just don't know what's possible. And so suspend your disbelief for a moment and indulge the idea that you might, if you give yourself proper time. Just like the experienced person in any sort of demeanor can predict things out into the future based on their experience, most people have no experience. So it just sounds scary. It just sounds ridiculous. And if you're only at 20 kilograms, it sounds preposterous. But you go there one step at a time. And we're not setting a time frame on this in terms of how quickly it has to be achieved. Secret Team said, when it gets easy, load a bit more weight. Progressive overload. Exactly. It really is simple. But because we see those headline numbers, we immediately go, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. And so we make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, unfortunately. Starshine said, so there's nothing for that. Our discs are now cut in and we would explode easily if we load the spine with squats. We've definitely got the wrong end of the stick there. I am so certain we've got the wrong end of the stick there. When you've had the disc operation, you're going to get a ton of scar tissue forming around that disc. You're already putting load through the spine. You're already putting load through the spine. The body will steadily remodel that scar tissue over time in accordance with the stimulus that you put through it. Taupots said, yes, so true. You taught me how to get off the toilet without pain. Go straight up. There we go. Yeah. Years of physio didn't tell me that, despite me saying it was painful. Yeah, like that's just experience. And that should really highlight a point, right? Years of physio with physios that have probably been doing it a while. Unfortunately, because of the system, I think certainly here in the NHS, the physio, even if they want to, doesn't get the opportunity to think about these things and question these things because they're not allowed to. And if you're watching this and you're a physio and you take issue with that message, please let me know below and clarify me and educate me in that regard. But we've had more than enough people that have come through the as medical practitioners in the program, have come through the program, paramedics, GPs, various specialists, trainers themselves, that have come through the program and can attest to this kind of thing, working through that system. And unfortunately, the system itself engenders a lack of lateral thinking from the practitioners that are doing that stuff. It seems, or it would be self-evident in that fact. So if you've got 10 years experience of doing the first year over and over again and you never changed anything, then you're just 1 year experience. You haven't actually evolved. You haven't actually thought about these things. And to not think about something so very, very simple. Again, this is another area that you'll see videos online of people doing like crazy exercises. Like the big one that I constantly talk about is using the Roman chair, and the person's got a barbell on their back and they're doing a Roman chair going, look how strong I am. And it's like, you're not including how you got into that position and how precarious and wobbly that is to pull off that little stunt. And that's just not accessible to someone that's injured their lower back. It's not wise either. Paula said, I'm going to join this program. Awesome. We'd love to have you. It's a bit daunting when you're in so much pain and there's definitely anxiety, and we have everybody has that to some degree. And the other thing to bear in mind is that you will most likely make an error in your exercise. You're not going to have a relapse-free journey through any kind of rehabilitation program because you're currently not having a relapse-free day. You're not able to go through a period of 12, 24 hours without flaring up sciatica in some way, shape, or form. So it's very reasonable that you do not have a very good base level of skill. But the only way to get better is to practice that with excessive guidance. Not excessive, but significant guidance. Paula said, before I worked out every day in my home gym, can I use my belt squat machine? No, don't use the belt squat machine. Leave the belt squat machine alone. All the belt squat machine allows you to do is build more strength in the legs that does not correspond to back strength. That is why we do it in the way in which we do. While the belt squat machine might have some element of utility, you'd leave that out. You'd leave that out. Why are we training the legs without training the back? All you're doing is allowing yourself to get a greater disparity between the strength of the legs and the strength of the lower back. We must move at the pace of the slowest soldier. If that's the lower back, there's no use putting 120 kilos on the belt squat machine by taking the back out of the equation. We are just lulling ourselves into a very, very dangerous false sense of security. So leave the belt squat machine alone. That's not to say you couldn't use it in a strategic manner in the future, but I would not suggest using it as part of your back rehabilitation. There is light at the end of the tunnel, Paul. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But I think one of the important things is there's a lot of people that have trained or done stuff in the gym before. And some of that stuff hasn't been guided. And so we're probably doing things in the gym scenario that are going to trip us up. And so make sure that you really follow things to the letter. And if you want to add any variations in at the phase 4 level, not at the phase 1, 2, and 3, you don't do anything else other than exactly what we say. And I've got actually, I might still have it here. Yes. So one of the guys on the post the other week posted something about having a flare-up, right? Oh, I've just started phase 2, I had a flare-up. So and then went back and forth, and then in the Facebook group came up with, I think I figured it out. It wasn't actually the hip hinge in the exercises. I noticed at work that my right glute was firing improperly, I think we mean. So I was messing around with some glute squeezes and clamshells, really trying to make it fire by squeezing. Something in there must have made my hamstring and back flare up, essentially. And this is a great example. Don't do extracurricular activities. If it's not in the program in phase 1 through phase 4, and certainly phase 1 through phase 3, do not add any other stuff. You don't need to. You don't need to. If it was necessary, it would be in the program. The program has hundreds of videos. More stuff, more random exercises is not correct. We want the specific focus stuff. And then we move forwards like that. And most of the errors come. Everybody in the program, every patient, all of you guys will have flare-ups along the way, precisely because you cannot protect your back from flare-ups, because you're still living life every day with a back in you that is injured, and you're looking after the kids, and you're going to work, and you're answering the door, and you're getting out of bed, and you're going to the toilet, and you may be a bit constipated, you might be straining. All of that stuff is happening every day in spite of the fact that you have a bad back. It's not like other areas of the body that become injured. And so flare-ups are part of the process. Embrace them, as painful as they can be. Utilize that increased sensitivity to be more strict on your exercises, but know that they come. We do not need to go off. It's the other things that happen outside, just like this example here, that are often valueless flare-ups. If we have a flare-up in response to a specific exercise, that is fantastic in the rehab, because we then look at precisely where are we getting that flare-up in the movement of the exercise, so we can figure out what we're doing wrong, so we can fix it. And that's the real value of the exercises specifically that we've chosen in the program. Let me come back to the comments. Tara said, joining the BI back in shape has been a lifesaver for me. I couldn't walk and had to sleep in a chair when I joined. Yeah, I know. It's slow, and it's been, but a very successful process for me. Nothing else has helped, and the support has been amazing. Thank you, Tara. I really appreciate that. You know, it's tough. Everybody starts in a different place, right? Everybody starts in a different place. And I think one of the most important things, like Paul, for example, he thinks it's like, oh, it's so bad, I couldn't possibly, like, this is so bad, right? I can't possibly do exercises. And then you see that actually, no, wait a second, there are others that have been just like this in different ways, maybe even the same way. And there is light at the end of the day, but back pain sometimes feels quite isolating because there's no clear injury to you, right? And you feel like those around you often, you know, don't really understand what you're going through. And especially when it lingers on for such a long period of time, you kind of retreat a little bit from those environments. And so realizing actually it's not just you, other people know what that's like, and importantly are getting better as a result of doing the right work is really important. Starshine said, I had a disc burst. This is in reply to Olu. Load gently, build the muscle around it so it won't be under as much strain by itself. It's just uncontrolled strain. That's the most important thing. Paula said, I've been paying an osteopath £70 a week. We do massage and acupuncture. It's been 7 weeks and not really improved. Back in shape seems the best option. Yes, it's substantially more affordable than doing weekly sessions with your osteopath or chiropractor or physio or whoever else. It really is. It really is. Substantially more affordable. And you'll most likely find you have better support, better guidance, and everything else. Like, I'm not stating there's not a value in doing that kind of work. The massage work, the acupuncture with your osteopath, there certainly can be value in that, but you need to understand precisely how that fits in. You must have a baseline of rehabilitation guidance, not just a pick and mix selection of exercises that you get on the way out of the door, education, and then you have a nice little cherry on the top, which is your treatment, which is your intervention, which is your osteopath sessions, which is your physio sessions, which is your massage that you have, which is your consultation with the spinal surgeon or whatever it may be. TGP has said, is it recommended to use my inversion table for decompression at least once daily? Yes, if you have an inversion table, we actually have a tutorial video on that. And for those of you on YouTube, I will share that with you guys now because I can. Go and have a look at this link. Here we go. I've pasted it into the chat on, no I haven't. We'll try and paste it into the chat. There we go. Right, we'll try and paste it into the other chat on YouTube. Let's see if we can paste it in here. Boom. There we go. I've pasted that into the chat on YouTube. Guys, watch that tutorial. The inversion table is more expensive, but I would argue a little bit better than the bed decompression. And it's a means of you regularly providing unloading to the discs. And I think using it sensibly in ways in which we instruct you in that tutorial video can be really, really helpful for you. So yeah, I think they're great tools, but so often people don't use them correctly. They use them in a reckless manner in a way that which is going to create more trouble for your lower back. You know, you also want to have the right sort of one. You know, if you haven't got one TGP, then you know, one that's got a long arm on it where you can unlock it like so, rather than having to round your back to unlock it after you've done a decompression. Don't go all the way upside down. That's just a gimmick that they sell on the videos. I think that's wholly unnecessary. It's too much. It's too much. It might feel nice in the moment. And really going from horizontal, spend a bit of time on horizontal, so it just allows you to relax. And then you go up to like that angle. You can go 60 to 80 degrees is what we normally put the strap limiter on. And then you come back up, halfway, back up, and then you kind of oscillate. You create this pumping. What you're trying to do on the inversion table is create a mimic of what we use in the other room behind me, which is the spinal decompression IDD table, which is a big machine. You guys might have seen it on the website. And that's very useful. It's very useful. But it is a relief strategy. You would not do it before your workout. You do it after the workout, after being very important. Varun has said, hello, I am suffering from back pain for 4 months during doing exercises suggested by you, but still the same. Someday, more flare-ups. Varun, I would suggest joining the program, because while there are many people that can do it on their own, if you're just following the exercise videos, you're missing out a ton of support, a ton of guidance, a ton of information. As I mentioned earlier, we've got the comparison of watching a video of me doing a hip hinge on the YouTube channel, right? And trying to do that correctly. I have no idea if we're doing it correctly. I have no idea how many times we're doing it a day, all those other variables, as opposed to having a full series of strategy videos that explain what we're doing and how we're supposed to be doing it, detailed tutorial videos to get it right, and then the live workout to follow along, and then the support along the way to troubleshoot. We have a whole troubleshooting library as well that helps you guys do these exercises aggravation free. If you're getting aggravation during the exercises, we're not doing them correctly. And if we're doing them over 4 months and we're not using a good amount of load, we're not following a program, we're just doing stuff we've seen on YouTube. Now, admittedly, there are a lot of people that are able to follow that on YouTube and do it and get great results, and we get people sharing their comments on the videos, and that's awesome. But for some of you guys, you need more support. You just need more instruction. And so, as I mentioned, there are hundreds of videos inside the program, and those are there for a reason, right? They're not there for no reason. And so I would suggest having a look at that. Esoterica said, how do we get more hip mobility besides just doing the hinge? I feel like my hips are always tight. You need to make progress on the rehabilitation work. Strengthening is what you need to do. Focus on strengthening first, and then you can work on hip mobility afterwards. And Starshine has said there is a specific hip mobility for lower back pain. Yeah, there is. Paul has said, how should we sit on a chair? I've been off work for 7 weeks, can't work, or stand at a desk. Should we be working even when we're in pain? I'll leave you with this final one here, because we're coming towards the end of the live. Oh gosh, I've been going for a while. Good. Hopefully it's been helpful, guys. The hardest job to have if you have a back pain or back injury or herniated disc or raging sciatica, we've seen it all, is to be a parent of a young child. Maybe you've got a 6-month-old, 3-month-old, a pregnant wife who's just given birth, and you can't quit that job. And you can still get better in spite of having that job. So you don't need to quit. You do need to be strategic. You do need the education that's there. You do need strategies. Sitting in the chair for a limited duration, you want to try and have it so that your thighs are not chucked up like this, but you want to try and be in that sort of position. That's going to be better, right? Because it allows the spine to be in a more neutral position. You want to have the capacity to lean back. We have a dedicated video, Paul and others. In fact, I might even be able to, seeing as I know why the computer's messing up, I can even share that video on back pain at work, which is about a 20-minute video that will tell you what to do. Basically, Paul, I'll give you some strategies. And it's better than me trying to go through it all now. There's also an article that lays it out. So have a look at that. That'll be helpful. Awesome. Domin has said your neck, cloud, and towel exercise recommendations for neck are great. Thank you very much. It does help. although unfortunately I still experience bad nights from time to time. Domin, thank you. I'm glad it helps. Those are some there's some essential back health exercises. We just want to look at what we're doing on a daily basis. That's going to be the big area for improvement. Awesome. Guys, I think I'm just going to have a quick look through over on TikTok, see how much I've missed here. Guys, those of you on TikTok, we've been going through all the YouTube stuff today. If you do need more help, please do check out the link. You can go up to the profile page up here and check out the link in the profile page to learn more about the program. I'm just looking through here. We've got a disc bulge at L4-5 and L5-S1. Someone's having an MRI. I think I'm suffering with sciatica, but not sure why I need an MRI. You don't need an MRI, Jack, but the MRIs can be a really helpful tool for learning and understanding about your specific spine, what's going on, the stresses and strain that it's under, the condition, the health, but understand very specifically sciatica is a problem of the lower back that irritates these nerves that then go down the leg. Very important point to understand. Someone said, JC, what's your opinion doing seated hip hinges first to build some strength? Do standing hip hinges. It's much better than seated hip hinges. Sitting down, you're adding all sorts of variables. Standing up would be better. Not least of all, a lot of people with back pain have limited hip mobility. So if they're trying to do their seated hip hinges, they're like, I'm already at the length of my hamstring stretch. I can't go any further, right? Because they've already got a significant flexion at the hip, right? So they're already hinged at the hip. So you're starting halfway through the hip hinge if you are doing it sitting down. So I'm going from a hinged position to even more hinge. I've got massive limitations. To think that that's safer is incorrect, as opposed to me starting with no hinging at the hip and then doing a little bit of a hinge, right? It's way more accessible. Seated hip hinge makes no sense again. I don't think it makes any sense. Yeah, sure, if you're hypermobile, if you've got tons of flexibility in the hamstrings, but why not just do it standing anyway? Now, if you are hypermobile, significantly hypermobile, then yes, you would get, if I imagine I'm going to like 90 degrees, I've got less, my spine is less horizontal in this position, even though I've got more hip hinging happening. So for me in that position, I'm over here. And that is going to exert more strain, one could say. But most people with back injuries, unless you're hypermobile, will not be anywhere near that on their hip hinge. Certainly not in the early stages of recovery. They'll be nowhere near that kind of depth of hip hinge. So the seated one, I would just leave it out. It's just another layer of complexity that we don't need. What do you think about hyperextension holds as an exercise to strengthen the lower back? Very, very difficult to actually scale in any meaningful way. When should you have stopped holding them, etc.? All sorts of different questions spring to mind. The hyperextension machine is just unnecessary. Do simple, accessible exercises like the squat, the hip hinge, the step up, dead bug, the marching bridge, those kind of ones. Oh, Brad, I'm glad you commented. Sent you an email. We did send you an email on the 31st, but I think it might have got caught in spam. But Brad has said here, Mike, you say we should eventually achieve 100% of our weight in squat or hip hinge. Yes, that's what we're aiming for. And there is no time frame to hit that. And there is certainly no rush to hit that at all. No rush at all. Just steadily aim towards that direction. And I know there's a lot of you guys will never get there. You'll never go there because quite honestly, you'll get bored. You want to do other stuff. But constantly be driving towards that kind of level. There's nothing, you as a human being, there's no reason you can't get there. Now sure, if you're starting this and you're 90 years old and you're starting from nothing, okay, maybe we might have a little bit of time constraints on getting there, but for everybody else, you know, it's extremely attainable. And again, the average adult that we're talking to here, according to the little bit of research I was doing the other day, and we shared this in the members area, 93 to 96% of you guys have no extended experience of doing strength training of any substance. And bear in mind, a lot of those research articles, strength training is not proper strength training. Pilates apparently came under the category of strength training in some of those, right? And so you don't have any layer of experience to know what's possible. So suspend disbelief for a moment and just focus on going one step in front of the other for an extended period of time. If there's one thing, one gift that you can get, for example, from going through the program, that I would hope you get, beyond obviously the feeling side of things and feeling better, it would be that you make strength training part of your life for the future indefinitely. Because the benefits of it for health and well-being, longevity, the delay of disability that can come with old age for some of us, is so worth it. If it was a pill, I've heard people say this time and time again before, if it was a pill, it would be sold out everywhere. The problem is it requires hard work, consistently over an extended period of time. and we all fall off the wagon from time to time. We all do. But if we can get that, that would be really, really cool. And on that note, guys, I will finish today's live session. Hopefully it's been helpful for you guys. If you have been watching, you're watching after the fact, you need any more help, then check out the link in the profile page or the link that is posted in the pinned comment to learn a little bit more about the program. And guys, we will be live again tomorrow, probably early afternoon UK time. So if you've missed anything or want to ask any questions, then you can jump back in then. We'll be there. We'll be here again then. And Thursday again, I think, is what we're going to do this week. So hopefully that helps. And we will see you then. Take care, guys. And I've just seen that comment come in from Starshine on scoliosis. Some websites say not to do barbell squats. A barbell squat is no different to any other squat. It's a loaded squat. If you can do it safely, I don't see any reason not to. And the simple fact of the matter is, if you have a scoliosis or if you don't have a scoliosis, you are putting your spine under load. You're going to pick up your grandchildren, you're going to pick up the shopping bags, you're going to pick up the laundry to take it upstairs, and many other things besides that in the presence of a scoliosis. And having family members that have reasonably significant ones, the only thing you can do is improve your body's ability to compensate for that alteration in spinal architecture. And safely progressing your strengthening exercises with an adherence to correct form and aggravation free, and focusing on rep ranges, I would argue, of around 10, rather than being tempted to do more traditional strength work at lower rep ranges, will be the way going forwards. So thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for all the questions, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.